Game day is just around the corner for UCLA as South Alabama, the Jaguars out of the Sun Belt Conference, coming into the Rose Bowl as the Bruins are ready to welcome them in. Well, what does it mean? Are they going to win? They're 3-0. Is it all said and done? Is this the easiest of the three? We'll talk about it here on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, your D1 play-by-play broadcaster, die-hard Bruins fan, your host for Locked On UCLA. Thanks for making Locked On UCLA your first listen each and every day. It's free on a variety of podcasting platforms. It's free wherever you get your podcasts. Go to YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. You can watch the podcast if you just like watching me talk. Yada, yada, yada. Here we go. You see my face. If you're listening, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for making it your first listen each and every day. The Bruins take on South Alabama. What does this mean for UCLA? Are they on the precipice of 3-0? Who knows? Get your hands in the air, Bruin fans. Bruin 8 clap time. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. So UCLA comes in 2-0. What does this mean? Does it mean much? Does it mean the Bruins are off to a good start? It means that this episode is brought to you by BetOnline, the best for all your sports wagering information, best for betting live in-game bets. BetOnline, believe UCLA is just a little under a 2-touchdown favorite. I've seen lines of 12.5, a little under. Bruins expected to be a lot closer this game against the Jaguars than the other two matchups against an FCS HBCU team at Alabama State, and arguably one of the worst FBS teams in the country in Bowling Green, apparently, after they went and lost to Eastern Kentucky last week, rated as low as can get. So the Bruins are in for a challenge this week. BetOnline thinks so. Everybody thinks so, especially after the Sun Belt Conference dominated college football, was contributing to one of the wildest college football days we had seen in a while. Sun Belt Conference had Georgia Southern, Texas had Georgia Southern, App State, and Marshall all score crucial wins last week. Georgia Southern over Nebraska, helping fire Scott Frost. App State on the road in College Station against A&M in a 17-14 win. Appalachia's not a state. If you don't know the joke, go look it up. And then Marshall taking down Notre Dame 26-21 out in South Bend. So for the Bruins, welcoming in South Alabama, the Jaguars got here a day earlier than normal to come sightsee, see the Pacific Ocean. I saw their coach say, and also get the Rose Bowl tour, kind of get acclimated to the LA idea of life for a day or two, right? Coming from South Alabama, a program that's only been in effect, that's only been around since 2009, only been playing in the FBS level since 2012, found its way to the Sun Belt Conference, which has already done well. Kind of what's the backstory for the Jags? 48-7 win over Nicholls State. So an FCS win for South Alabama, and the Mutual Conference, I guess, they beat a MAC team in Central Michigan who was a lot better than Bowling Green. 38-24, a game in which South Alabama led 31-7 before a Jim McElwain coached Central Michigan Chippewas team. And anytime you can say Chippewas, you just have to say it. In Michigan, they went and dominated them on the road, did South Alabama. So this is a team that's coming to play, ready to go, and wanting to make a statement on the road in the Rose Bowl. And what we've seen so far, the Rose Bowl crowds, they haven't made a difference. Nobody showed up. That's just the fact of life. The Bruins have fought through it anyway, through weather, potentially rain, didn't happen, through the incredible heat against Bowling Green. And now this will be the toughest non-conference battle of the season for the Bruins. Their final non-conference game before Pac-12 play hits next week in Boulder, Colorado. Also an 11 a.m. kick. UCLA, they're going to be looking for their first 6-game winning streak as a program overall since 2005. You want to know why we're so down on our luck sometimes as Bruin fans? For a team that's supposed to be a good program, normally you want to string together more than 5-game winning streaks at a time, and you know that's good but the Bruins have won 5 in a row, dating to the end of 2021, opening 2022 for Chip Kelly's now 5th year. And the Bruins haven't won 6 games in a row since 2005. It's been a long time. The Bruins have had their chances. They just have not done so. The Bruins have scored five straight games. They've scored 40 or more points. A chance to do so against South Alabama would be the first time UCLA in program history, any football team ever, has scored 40 or more points in 6 consecutive games. I don't think the problem this game for the Bruins will be scoring points, moving the ball. This is a South Alabama team that doesn't have too many sacks in the early going against an FCS team or Central Michigan. They only have 3 sacks. They forced 3 turnovers, recovered a couple fumbles, and they have 1 interception. So this isn't a game I truly think the Bruin offense will have any trouble. Depending on what DTR and Zach Charbonnet look like after mostly taking the game off, if you're DTR being pulled in that second quarter, and then Zach Charbonnet coming off a personal bye, if you will. The Bruins look like they've been clicking in all cylinders offensively. This is a true test to see, all right, we want to look like a juggernaut. Obviously, this is not the defense of Bowling Green or Alabama State. This is something the Bruins should put up points. Absolutely. And I'm not saying those defenses were good, but I'm just saying this is a game the Bruins should put up points. Will they put up 45, 50? I don't think so. But they shouldn't have any problem moving the ball with a rushing offense that's best at yards per game for UCLA's offense in the conference in the Pac 12. That's without Zach Charbonnet playing a single game. And even South Alabama's coach, when he was at Indiana, was saying, hey, this is a guy that looks way better than when he was at Michigan, and how Chip Kelly's been able to maximize his potential has led him to be even that much more successful as a Bruin and furthering on into his football career. So for the Bruins, this is an excellent opportunity. Clearly the toughest non-conference game they're going to play. You don't want to fall asleep just like some of these other teams did against the Sun Belt last week, all Power 5 teams. And for the Bruins, you don't want to be the recent laughing card. You have the gift of a dream schedule to start 3-0. Arguably, you could start 5-0 and have one of your longest winning streaks in program history. Yet UCLA just needs to go one step at a time, not overlook South Alabama, which could arguably be, yes, I'm going to say it, a tougher game than Colorado might pose next week. A road conference matchup against a former UCLA head coach who prides himself on defense. The Buffaloes haven't been stopping anybody recently. UCLA needs to put up points. They need to show their offense, hey, let's get Charbonnet going again. Let's see DTR sit in the pocket. This is a team that probably will pressure too much. They've got 7 QB hurries over 2 games. DTR has his chance to get the passing game going. Let's see that go. Hit Kaz Allen. Hit Jake Bobo. Let's see Bobo get that first Bruin touchdown since transferring over from Duke. I like to see that. Let's see what happens. We've seen a lot of big plays from the Bruins. That can certainly be the case for UCLA in this one against South Alabama. That's certainly the case. UCLA should have no problem scoring points. That's just my thought process on it against South Alabama. A team who's ready to come in, very athletic, agile. South Alabama's defensive coordinator in his weekly press conference was saying a lot of one-on-one matchups need to be won by his defense to succeed. And while there have been some offensive line struggles for the Bruins, I'm not thinking that this is the case this week. UCLA should score points, not 45, but a regular type game in terms of dominating with football possession and moving the football accordingly. Before we talk about UCLA's defense against South Alabama's offense, let's hear some words from our friends at BetOnline, as BetOnline is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all your football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this week's games. BetOnline is the continued source, your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and all scores around the country. That's just an easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, golf, you name it, they got it. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. Bet online where the game starts. And where the game starts to get interesting in this matchup this week against South Alabama, I'm fairly certain this one will be a high-scoring game, a thriller. South Alabama's team offensively has been able to move the football, and we've seen the Bruins gave up some chunks of yardage to Alabama State last week, especially in the early going. Gave up a nice little drive here and there to Bowling Green, although let's face it, the Falcons are rather inept offensively outside of the Bruins' miscues in week 1 at the Rose Bowl, barring just the dramatic heat UCLA faced. One, the Bruins will have the students back on campus. Hopefully that improves the showing in the Rose Bowl despite the tarp and everything. Hopefully the students show up, make it loud, make it tough, and give the Jags a tough time dealing with the football. It won't be the most electric atmosphere, an 11 a.m. kickoff on a Saturday morning in Pasadena. Students have a lot more fun things to do, but we'll see what happens. UCLA defensively leads the Pac 12 in rushing defense, but this is a South Alabama team that scored 11 touchdowns in its first couple of games, averaging 43 points per game coming into this one, as they've beaten an FCS team, dominated a MAC opponent, but I think they will move the ball against the Bruins. Well, what does this mean? Who are the guys to look out for from South Alabama? Well, let's get to it. Right down to it. Starting with the guy who leads the offense, the quarterback. It's Carter Bradley. Started the last couple games, a 64% completion percentage. He's thrown for 6 touchdowns, 1 interception on the year, the only turnover for South Alabama so far this season. 6 TDs along with 52, averaging over 300 yards passing per game and 6 touchdowns to 1 interception. He has been solid so far. Quarterback rating over 167.73. A guy who's completed 43% of his passes, has a good receiving core, including 2 lethal wideouts. Jalen Wayne, remember that name, he wears number 0, has 13 receptions in 2 games, averages about 15 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns in 2 games, almost 100 yards receiving per game. That's tough to do. Also, Colin Lacey, who's got 11 receptions, 15.36 yards per catch, a little more than his teammate Wayne. He wears number 4. No touchdowns for him, a long of 40, but receiving yardage about 85 yards per game on 11 receptions. They've varied the receptions beyond and the catches throughout the variety of their roster. You have Devin Voisin, Braylon McReynolds, even their back, LaDamian Webb, who's made a couple of catches for 48 yards, but the majority of their passes will be looking towards Jalen Wayne and Colin Lacey, as those are the 2 guys that will make some immediate impact. Boyson, McReynolds, and the rest of the guys will come in and slot in nicely. So the quarterback finds his guys. He's been throwing the ball all around. He looks nice. And for a Bruin rushing defense that's been stout so far, the man to look out for, LaDamian Webb, not LaDainian Tomlinson, the former Charger, LaDamian Webb comes in. He's had 38 carries so far in 2 games, a workhorse. He's gained about 189 yards, about 5 yards per pop per carry, 4 touchdowns rushing the football, along of 30. He almost averages 100 yards per game rushing the football, has caught a couple of passes, has 4 of his team's 5 rushing touchdowns. The team seems kind of split evenly, 6 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns, a team that can move the football and just continue to get yards. And yeah, they haven't done it against Power 5 competition, but I think they will move the ball on the Bruin defense, especially if UCLA doesn't force turnovers like they did last week against Alabama State. So the second straight game against the team from Alabama for the Bruins. I think this is a game where South Alabama will get chunk yardage. They're not as inept as Bowling Green. They will punch it in the end zone, unlike Alabama State did and could for the most part of that game last week. And this is a game that will lend itself to being a bit of a dogfight. It certainly will. But the one bugaboo that South Alabama has been plagued by these first 2 weeks, and if they cannot clean it up, UCLA will win going away, hands down, easily, everything. If they don't clean this up, and by this, I mean the penalty yardage. South Alabama in the first 2 games has been called for 19 penalties, accounting for 180 yards. That's about 10 penalties per game. We're rounding up, and 90 yards worth of penalty yardage in 2 games against a team they won by 14, led by 24 against Central Michigan, and a game where they dominated against Nicholls State, a FCS opponent that they started with in week 1. So if South Alabama can't clean up their penalty yardage, then UCLA is going to take advantage And yes, I know UCLA's been sloppy in their own penalties in their own right, but not to the dramatic effects that South Alabama has been so far in their first 2 weeks. And you would think, all right, they've worked on it through practice, through this week, first couple of weeks, but sometimes through 2 games, 3 games, it tends to be a trend, unfortunately, more than an outlier the more it happens. So maybe the Bruins can be fortunate enough to find the Jags behind the chains from their own doing without a Bruin sack or two and get that big sack on 3rd and long or force that turnover when they're forcing Carter to throw, go deep, and they can't get their running game going to get 2nd and short, 3rd and short because of a certain hold of something or a defensive penalty that puts the Bruins deeper into Jaguar territory that leads to more points. So that's the one thing I noticed. They haven't been really turning over the ball offensively. It's been just a couple of turnovers here and there they forced defensively, and then somehow getting through all the penalties called against the Jags so far this year. So the Bruins should not, will not, must not take this team lightly going forward into this matchup this weekend. Okay, now it's time for prediction time. I know everybody's excited. It's prediction time. Let's name what's going to happen, at least what I think, against this South Alabama front. UCLA, a chance to have their longest winning streak in over 17 years as a program. Chance for the first time in program history to have 6 straight games scoring over 40 points. This was what all the Bruin fans were expecting when they had Josh Rosen. And that didn't happen. Even with the Brett Hundley offense, that never happened. With Chip Kelly being hired as head coach, scoring 35 to 40 was expected to be the norm. The Bruins, they didn't jump out of the gate really quickly in the Chip Kelly era. Now they're building towards something. No transfer you jokes here. It's coming here. The Bruins would love to, for the first time in program history, score 40 or more. Is that going to happen against South Alabama? My personal thought process is I do think the Bruin offense will succeed and Charbonnet will have his time. And DTR, I think, will have some time in the pocket unless the offensive line just crumbles in front of him and he's going to have to make plays with the leg. As South Alabama knows, this is a team that's very, very athletic in the Bruins, and especially in the skill positions. DTR, Kaz Allen, and of course Charbonnet, all these guys for the Bruins making plays in these first couple of weeks. Last week, 88 Bruins being used. UCLA, I think, will score 35. A good offensive 35, I will say, but only 35. They won't put up 45. They'll get stopped a couple more times than they expect. And then in weeks previous, 35, and South Alabama will have 28 points. I think it'll be a 35-28 final for the Bruins. Back and forth game. UCLA actually in these first couple of games in the second half, which is a good telling sign moving forward. They've actually outscored opponents 35-0 in the second half of games, albeit you look at the competition, FCS and one of the worst teams in the FBS graded out through week 2 of the college football season. South Alabama will be the first team to score in the Bruins in the second half. They'll make it close. I think the Bruins will keep it about a 14-point edge. You could argue that South Alabama could get the ball first, score first, just like Bowling Green did, move the ball like Alabama State did to open that game last week. And the Bruins could find themselves behind the 8 ball early, 7-0. That could certainly happen. I just think the Bruins will come out offensively, clicking on everything. Charbonnet will look fresh, which is important. DTR, I think, will have his time. And if for some reason there's no DTR, Garbers, he was looking fine against Alabama State. Either way, the confidence is sky high in the Bruins, which will be a much tighter affair. They'll kind of keep the Jags at an arm's distance, in my perspective. Touchdown, 2 touchdown. Well, they'll be in control. South Alabama will keep it close late, probably a fourth quarter touchdown to make it a touchdown game. And the Bruins, quote unquote, for this season's perspective, would eke out a 35-28 win. If you look at like previous schedules for the Bruins, South Alabama would be probably the the easiest non-conference opponent they would play in the previous version of year's schedules, right? This year, the Jags are actually the toughest team they'll play in this non-conference stretch. So prediction-wise, Bruins score 30, win 35-28, win by a touchdown. A game that's a little closer than it needs to be. The Bruins probably look better than the score indicates. I think that's the case. Charbonnet churns about 120 on the ground, 2 TDs, DTR about 275 in the air. 2 scores and they score maybe defensively, special teams. Who knows? Reverse flicker past something or another. Who knows? Whatever. It's all good. I think between the 2 tubs from Charbonnet, a potential couple from DTR, the Bruins will mix in another there. I think South Alabama will mix in a couple of scores in the air, get their big receivers. Let Damian Webb will get a couple of quick, cheapy ones from the 1 yard line, 2 yard line, punch it in, and the Bruins will win this one closer than need be, but win it 35-28. You could argue maybe the bigger team in upset alert in LA will be playing Saturday night in the Coliseum against Fresno State. That's all I'm saying. I know we're all Bulldog fans this week and hoping those Trojans fall down and go to the wayward side, but Bruins, I think, win this 35-28. Defense makes a couple of plays. This game could flip heavily in favor of the Bruins if South Alabama continues to get penalized, and any sort of defensive pressure UCLA can place on the quarterback and any amount of turnovers could make this a much different game than what I'm saying it could be. If they force 1, if not 2 turnovers mixed with a bunch of South Alabama penalties, UCLA could win this game going away. What it means if UCLA wins by a touchdown, it means that they're 3-0. They got through the non-conference slate unscathed, hopefully healthy, and that they're working their way towards a dream season, still undefeated against a very winnable road conference opener in Boulder next week. If the Bruins go out and blow out South Alabama and look even better than they did in week 1, week 2, and continue to show improvement, that's pretty scary for the rest of the Pac-12 and the nation. And I know the Bruins have been getting a little top 25 vote here, a little non-vote there. If they dominate South Alabama and look impressive, I know no national audience despite the early start time. Good morning, LA, Pasadena, 11 a.m. for 2 straight weeks. But the Bruins, if they dominate South Alabama, they'll get a lot more love in this top 25, whether it be the USA Today, Coaches Poll, AP poll, whatever it is. Bruins should get more love if they blow them out. I'm not expecting it that way. It would just come from a lot of turnovers and a lot of penalties from the Jags. And we've seen the Bruins certainly shoot themselves in the foot. No pun intended. We saw Garbers on the doorstep of the end zone throw a pick. We saw UCLA not look too sharp in week 1. Avoiding any stupid mistakes, which I think the Bruins should. They cleaned it up last week. Fairly impressive, a week-to-week kind of shifting in the right direction. The Bruins should look to clean up everything, play a clean ball game, and hope the defense can handle a South Alabama offense. I think that'll move the ball, find some ways to score, riding momentum as the underdog, especially with all the Sun Belt success last week. Maybe that plays in week 3 of the college football season again. I just don't think the Bruins will find as Goliath. They'll be slayed this week, and they'll get through the non-conference portion as we almost all expected fairly easily in 3-0. That's my thoughts on this matchup this week against South Alabama. If you're on YouTube, comment, subscribe. Just say, what do you think your thoughts are in the comment section? If the Bruins will win, whatever. Tweet at the show at Locked On Bruins, your thoughts, comments, concerns about the Bruins this week. Otherwise, this has been Locked On UCLA. Go make Locked On Pac-12 your second listen. Spencer McLaughlin keeps your everything up and down on the conference, keeps it straight, tells you what the Bruins are going to do and what the rest of the conference is doing with solid previews and recaps for all going forward. Meanwhile, Bruin fans, so I preview 3-0. Get your hands in the air. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fights. Yeah, that's right. We'll recap this. We'll recap this bad boy on Monday. Yes, recap on Monday. We'll talk about it, see if I was right, if I was wrong, what's going around the Bruins. Hopefully everything's good. Also, Brandon Williams is going to commit coming the next week. We'll have our eyes on that for men's hoops coming up. Brandon Williams choosing between St. John's and UCLA on the basketball front. Meanwhile, cheer on your Bruins Saturday morning, 11 a.m. We'll react immediately after that game with the Locked On Now for Locked On UCLA. But our true reaction, full in depth, will come on Monday when the Bruins look to go to 3-0 this upcoming weekend. This has been Locked On UCLA. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer saying, hey, enjoy the weekend, everybody. We'll come back with more. Go Bruins!